And welcome back. I've been excited about this panel all month since we've arranged it, basically.
All month.
This is my favorite panel of all today, maybe.
Well, you don't know yet. Let's see what happens, right?
That's absolutely true. So this is Brett and Adam, and these guys know everything there is to know about mobile in Africa, the entire continent.
Absolutely, every piece of detail.
It's a well-known fact that Africa is a country, obviously. I'll get that cliche in there first before.
So, can you tell me a bit about your site? What you guys cover, what you do, what's your thing?
I'm going to let Adam lead with that because it was really his vision for the site. We started about a year ago, but Adam.
So basically, where we come from as HTXT Africa is we looked around at what people were writing about technology in Africa, and there's a lot of very good B2B business sites who are covering news about investment and where the money's flowing, all that kind of thing. But what there wasn't really yet was really good mainstream technology sites. I mean, for me, I found a lot of the best stories about places like iHub and Josie Hub, NILab, and the tech hubs and all of these innovation centers across the continent. All the best writing about them was coming out of sites based in the UK and the US. So we felt that we really needed to launch an African platform for African writers to write about what's actually happening on the continent. And we're mostly based in South Africa at the moment. Realistically, we're mostly based in Johannesburg because that's where our offices are. But we're slowly spreading out and taking over the media landscape of the entire planet eventually. So.
Fair enough. So the one thing that I would love it if you guys could just actually describe what mobile in Africa looks like, because I've been following it a little bit, but I don't want to get it wrong.
Well, again, I mean, as per Adam's joke a little bit earlier, it really depends on what country you're talking about, and what the basic level of infrastructure is like. But the one thing that is very common about Africa right now is that because there's been a very slow proliferation of landline and existing infrastructure from a data perspective, firstly, it's the first time that many Africans can make a phone call is with mobile. So that's kind of the first thing. And the second thing is probably easily 80% of the market right now, it's the first time they have any interaction with the internet. Is not just on a mobile device, but it's completely wireless. They very, very rarely actually come into contact with a PC or a tablet. They're a smartphone is really sophisticated a lot of the time. Feature phones and the kind of very, very simple functionality, very small mobile browsers, are a lot of the time the first form of contact with the internet a lot of Africans have.
Aren't there just a few countries that are kind of taking the lead within the entire continent, that if you follow, say, like Zimbabwe or Nigeria, that maybe you can kind of get a sense of, like, hardware-wise, what's coming up, like what's coming up around them? So, like, one country will kind of influence its surrounding countries. Like, is there that kind of trend? Because that's the way that I was kind of perceiving it, that if I followed a couple of key countries, then maybe I could keep my pulse on the entire continent. Sort of.
if there is one big general trend that covers the whole continent, it's that it is incredibly price sensitive for very obvious reasons, and that really is what drives everything to my mind, and that's why this year's going to be so incredibly important. We're starting to see really good quality smartphones coming in at less than $50, and that puts it on a par with certainly in South Africa the most popular phone previously was the Nokia Asha, and so it's hitting those kind of price levels now, and that's when you're going to see massive adoption mainstream. And I don't think that's limited to one country. I think that's the same in Nigeria as it is in Kenya, as it is in Rwanda, Uganda, Zimbabwe.
I don't know if you listened to Mark Zuckerberg's talk, his keynote yesterday, but one of the key things that I don't think a lot of people actually noted, one of the operators that was speaking with him, I forget which one it was, but essentially said that the moment, so if you look historically at mobile phone usage, the moment feature phones reached the sub $50 mark, the market exploded. So feature phones, not smartphones, all right? It's the same thing now for smartphones. Smartphones are starting to get into that area. So we think the smartphone era is really, really big now. We think this congress we're at is big and exciting right now. It is about to explode when smartphones hit that $50 mark, because there are so many people that currently can't afford the sub $100 smartphone. Mm-hmm. So the moment that happens, it's going to go crazy. In terms of hardware, you were mentioning just now, it's also been an interesting dynamic to observe the African market over the past 3-4 years, because generally speaking, Africa's where all of the tech lands once the rest of the world's been done with it, and we've generally been like a year, 2 years off the mark. You know, there's old Pentium machines being sold in places like Zimbabwe and in Botswana and that kind of thing. But what's interesting is Intel chose to launch one of its first smartphone reference designs, the Intel YOLO phone, in Kenya with Safaricom, right? Which is really, really exciting. It was the whole rest of the world, you know, all of the journalists in the rest of the world were screaming at us because they were like, how did you get your hands on this device? And we were like, well, it got launched in Kenya, and, you know, we kind of made a couple of calls, and it was the first time that we had something that everyone else wanted. And that's starting to happen more and more, because we sit squarely in this space where all of the operators and all of the technology companies know this is the only place they can really get big double-digit growth from anymore, right? Yeah. And they've got to think really, really creatively about that price sensitivity Adam was talking about. Also, at the same time, around usage models. All right, there are things that matter, much more than the speed of the internet. It's going to be the fact that often the power infrastructure doesn't allow you to charge once every 12 hours. Right? You need 24 hours worth of battery life on a smartphone.
What do you mean? I thought we're already getting 5 days of battery life. No.
No. It's just you're not using your phone enough, right?
I'm not using my phone right. Okay, I get it.
But seriously, there's all of these very interesting challenges. There's also, you're going to look at Africa and see stuff being developed around that mobile industry and around the technology industry that focuses on alternative power, solar, all of these kinds of things. That it's cool to do in the rest of the world. It's needed in Africa. Does it answer your question?
No, absolutely it does. Now, the one other thing that I was always really curious about, because being based in Taiwan and having a heavy China focus on my interests and just plain what's going around me, it's true, the sub $100 range is getting amazing. The sub $50 range is getting interesting. Now, who are the players that you think are building quality sub $50 devices?
To be honest, the most important players, certainly from a South African perspective, and I think it is different further up continent, are the network operators, and they're partnering with Qualcomm's reference device program to bring out really good devices, not just at an attractive price, but also with data bundles. You can buy a 7-inch tablet that's a Qualcomm reference device for less than 1,000 rand, which is about $70, and you get 200 meg a month for that, which is a lot of data for people who are looking at it. One of the biggest drivers is for education. People looking at it for their kids. Schools are starting to move over to tablet based programs, even in the state education sector. So, I mean, that's curiously, it's not the big manufacturers that are doing it in that sense.
I think the other interesting thing about it is you look at that kind of price point. So that specific tablet that Adam was talking about is so interesting, because when we received it for review and we saw what the value proposition in terms of the data it got bundled with, it was, also one of the first times that it was, you buy the device and you get a SIM card that has a year's worth of free data in 200 meg increments for the 12 months. It was cheaper than buying the data casual. So it was like, if you need to buy data, buy the data and get a free tablet. So that was the one that was like amazing. You were like, that is crazy, crazy value. But the second thing is, it's difficult as technology journalists because we play with some of the really, really high-end devices, and then you get this very basic Android device, and you look at it and you go, but it's... So what do you want for like $70? It's like,
what are you going to do with that?
No. But I'm saying it's not great. It wouldn't be my choice, but it's $70. What do you expect you're going to get out of $70? And here you've got a fairly alright screen. It can play video just fine. It's got a 21 megabit per second data connection built into it. It's got maybe 6 or 7 hours of battery life. But you can install apps on it. You can get email on it. You can browse the internet on it, and it's $70. So it might not be the best screen, it might not be the best camera, but it's a very capable device. And I think that's the that's kind of that binary switch. It's between not having connectivity and suddenly having connectivity. That's the really big switch. And then the incrementally better user experiences, maybe 20% of the whole equation. So I think that's what makes it so exciting, is people that don't have access to having access.
So how much are data plans a month? What kind of money are we looking at here?
Well, again, it depends. So Adam's on an operator called Cell C that, from a prepaid perspective, is really cheap. I'm going to let you speak to those numbers because I have no real clue.
So I mean, in terms of prepaid data, if you spend, it's expensive. I mean, if you spend probably around $40 worth of around a month, you get about a gig of data and enough airtime to make it pretty much unlimited. I think the curious situation we're in there at the moment, which is very different from my experiences in Europe, is that it's actually much cheaper, much more cost-effective to be on a prepaid tariff because
really,
if you're looking at the same kind of setup on a contract, you're paying almost double that, aren't you?
In fact, it was a switch that happened in South Africa like 2 years ago. It was, I think that I'd love to think that the media had something to do with it because you're like, this is wrong, and operators, you're just like ripping the market off and everything else. But the reality was the people that weren't, in the kind of, living standard measure or, economic bracket to be able to qualify for credit and therefore being able to qualify for a cell phone contract, were the ones that were getting screwed because they were on prepaid, right? And they were paying easily double the casual data rate. They were paying a lot more for their airtime, and that flipped over about 2 years ago. And what's happened is it has literally continued. It's really, really interesting because it depends on how much data you buy, and it depends on the operator. There's an operator called Telkom Mobile that's part of the state-owned telco business, I suppose. It's their mobile arm. They happen to have this license, so they decided to open up a mobile operator. But
fair enough.
As you do. But the thing with that is because they've been desperately trying to attract a lot of users, their prices are ridiculously cheap, and they're a great network to get onto because they've got a very, very low user base. So you've got this fantastic LTE network with very few users on, right? And we get it. It's also strange because when you look at it, a lot of the time, the mobile network is so far evolved by comparison to the landline environment that mobile first is also not about the fact that it's the only way you can get connectivity. It's often the better way. So the average ADSL speed in South Africa is about 4 megabits per second, right? Which is slow. I know you're going like, my word,
oh my God,
I can't get Gmail over that, right? But seriously, you can get a very comfortable 20, 30 megabits per second over mobile. And people go, well, that's actually the preferable way. Yeah, easy.
Awesome.
I get about 27 megabits on a fairly congested LTE network from my home. So there you go.
So I found it kind of interesting that when I asked you the hardware question, that who's kind of coming out with the best hardware, and it was Qualcomm's reference design through carriers, and then it was prepaid was the preferable way to buy. That doesn't
weird,
seem
right?
That's very weird. So who is it? Is it still Nokia? Is this where is it for hardware?
You'd be surprised. You see a fair amount of Nokia in countries like Nigeria and stuff like that. But it's interesting. It's because it's an old brand. It's got a lot of prestige associated with it. It's got more to do with what the brand meant. So what's really interesting is you have these things called Nokias, all right, which are knockoffs. Are 100% knockoffs of Nokia devices, but the I is an L, right? But it's very small. You've got to look at it very carefully. It is a perfect knockoff of this device. Can you believe it? Nokia, right? And if you just kind of looked at it, that's a Nokia, it's fine. But it's actually a Nokia. And these kinds of little feature phones have made it into the market because the brand is still really, really strong. But believe it or not, we've seen Nokia move on to Microsoft, and it's become all of that. We have them in South Africa now too. But it's really interesting that the Windows Phone platform hasn't really taken off as big in South Africa as I think some places in the world. It's
Wait, which places? No,
but also look at it from the perspective of what's super exciting for us is that you're starting to see the sub $100 Windows phones come to market, and increasingly they're coming with free 1-year licenses for Office and all of these kinds of things. So that becomes really cool because it means that a whole bunch of functionality that people would previously have had to pay for is now, it comes to their phone.
No, absolutely, and I am a Windows Phone user. I mean, I regularly go back onto my 1020. Well, no, not my 930 now, because I have to have the latest one all the time.
Seriously, you're going to admit that in public? That
yeah, I'm totally a Windows Phone user. It's me. I'm the one. I'm doing it. No, but it's true. Like their hardware is getting a lot more compelling at the lower price points. Now, what about things like Android One or kind of that kind of area of Android?
I don't think that's been launched.
It hasn't. But do you think that would be something that is of relevant or interest in Africa? Because it hasn't. It started in India, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the Android has the lower end sewn up completely already. I mean, and we are sort of hearing words from Firefox that there's going to be a Firefox phone as launched any day now. Every time they put out a press release saying it's coming, the operator they're supposedly partnering with puts out a press release saying no, we're not. So it's very much a yes, we are, no, we're not thing.
I'm pretty sure Firefox is always any day now.
It's definitely in Botswana.
They have a screen
I think
and a board,
it
and
is,
it's like any day.
But yeah, I mean, is there a need for Android One? I don't know.
I think it's really interesting that the majority of those OEM devices and these white label devices that we're seeing that are coming through the operators have some of the coolest Android experience because it's a pure Android experience. And what's interesting is when you start stripping out all of the customizations that the high-end vendors tend to put on, it's a really nice device. It's like it's ironic that people pay like a premium price for a Nexus device, which has got none of the enhancements that any of the vendors put on them. And then on the low end, you're actually getting exactly the same functionality because they got all the crap stripped out anyway, right?
Or like imagine getting one of the new Samsung devices without TouchWiz. It would just be amazing.
Yeah, I'd pay more.
I'd pay more for without TouchWiz.
Absolutely.
So what did you guys think of the S6 launch? Because we met up there. This guy was my life savior in this one because I couldn't find my rep to let me in, and you gave me a hand.
How did you actually get into the press area at the back? Because you had a partner badge, right?
I don't know.
Oh, you just walked.
I
right?
went exactly where I wanted to.
So, if you'd hold the devices up from the bottom and you put an iPhone next to them, I wouldn't be able to tell which was which, right? I found that kind of disturbing. I thought from a hardware perspective, they felt really, really good. The specs are good, everything else. The 6 leaves me stone cold. I look at it and I go, if you put these two devices down, the S6 Edge would be the one that I would grab, not the S6. And if that's the case, why produce the S6?
Well, I think because they had to, right? Like I think that they needed to come out with a phone that looked like an iPhone but was on Android, right? And then
they really wanted to sell a lot of 6 Edges, so they needed to produce a phone that you could compare it to and go, well, this one's much nicer. We want to sell this one, right?
But I also think that if they had come out with just like the 6. Right, we would have ripped the media would have ripped them apart for coming out with a clone. Yeah. Whereas now nobody's really having this clone discussion because the 6 Edge is so strong.
Sure.
But there's absolutely no use case for the 6 Edge,
except for the fact that it's got an interesting design. And this is what I've been saying for like a long while. I think that Samsung's made really strong devices in terms of the value proposition's been fantastic. They've been loaded with specs. They've come with a lot of free value, the free Dropbox accounts and the free access to... You do get this in the rest of the world, right? Well, okay, good.
Absolutely,
good.
Totally.
Not just South Africa, but all of that free value has been interesting. So when you need to upgrade your contract or you sit down and start weighing that up, you go, for the money spent, this is a better value proposition. But I haven't felt like the devices themselves were that much better. I felt, than anything else. In fact, I think that Sony and HTC have made much nicer Android devices in terms of their flagships, and I would go for one of those before I went for a Samsung. And in that process, I think that all of the S-class devices just kind of became very samey. It's like, oh, look, it's just this very dull, blandish kind of look. The S6 Edge takes it to a place where I don't care that the curvy stuff doesn't doesn't.
anything.
Bear in mind, I'm an Apple user, right? So
yeah.
so it's all it's curvy and it's pretty and look, it looks really. So that I think people underestimate the value that good industrial design and something that doesn't necessarily serve a purpose, but just looks really, really nice. That kind of effect, that can have on someone. But that's what makes me excited about that device. Is they didn't go samey.
You're
They
totally
said
right.
that it's different. It's interesting. It's we don't know what it does, but it looks kind of cool, and people are going to flock to it. I think that's
Yeah.
going to be the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thanks so much for taking the time to
Sure.
come
thanks,
on board
yeah.
and talk about Africa.
Absolute
And
pleasure.
I'm just gonna ask one last question. I know I have to
Cool.
wrap it up. I'm getting
Okay.
the sun.
All right,
That's
go,
okay.
go.
So you mentioned the knuckler.
Yes.
How popular are?
You want me to ship you one?
I totally want one. No, but how popular are clones in Africa?
It's really interesting. It has that whole dynamic
Mm-hmm.
has a lot to do with big brands. So you see a lot of BlackBerry clones. BlackBerry's really big in parts of Africa still, and it's got less to do with the data service. It's just got to do with the fact that it's an iconic brand. So it's starting to fade as feature phones are coming in. That's starting to fade in a really, really big way. So you're actually seeing the clone problem, I think, go away to a certain extent. So
Okay,
yeah.
interesting. All
because
right.
people can have cheap Android phones, and that's what
fair.
they want to do.
All right, cool. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. Now, what's your website again? And where can we follow you?
HTXT.Africa. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at HTXTAfrica. I'm at Bretsky. He is at Adam Oxford. What else do we want to plug? Is that good enough? Will that
I'm
work?
giving my phone number out. So.
Oh, no phone
Okay,
numbers on
yes.
the lines for today.
Oh, well, sadly. There you go. Thanks, Nicole.
All right, guys, we'll be back in just a few minutes. Thanks so much for joining us.